Hello and welcome to the RevOps show. Tech debt has been a big conversation topic lately. And when I say tech debt, I'm not talking about technology debt, I'm talking about technical debt. And it's something everyone has to a certain degree. You'll get a lot of insight from Doug and Jess on defining tech debt, what it looks like, and ways to mitigate it. So, with that being said, let's get into this episode.
Jess.
Doug.
Jess.
Doug.
Do you know what today is?
The last business day before we go to inbound.
Jess, I have to tell you something right now. I'm actually very worried about you. Because that is exactly what I was getting at. I mean,
wow.
Word for word.
I'm worried about me too.
This can't be healthy for you, Jess.
No, not at all. I've been here too long.
I think you were a much happier, more well-adjusted person when you would have answered the question Friday.
You know what? I think I need to go on a sabbatical to rest and rejuvenate.
But wait, I thought that's what the RevOps show was. I thought the RevOps show was rejuvenation.
This is my rejuvenation. I was gonna say, is this my weekly sabbatical? Is that what this is?
Well, I mean, Jess, at Lyft every week is a sabbatical.
Clearly, yeah, sure, we'll go with that. Every day's a holiday.
Every day's
like walking through a meadow of lilies.
A meadow of lilies, exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. Or even just chilling out in a meadow of lilies.
Mm-hmm.
It's like having a picnic. So it is the last business day before you and we're not even going to inbound on a business day.
We aren't. Nope, we're going on a holiday. Because
I can barely contain my excitement. I just have to tell you, I'm studying up, loading up on dad jokes for you. Got to get through a whole week.
Look forward to it.
But I've been thinking.
Uh-huh.
Are you getting nervous?
I am a little bit. I'm always nervous when you start with, I've been thinking.
Would you agree that music plays an important role at Lyft?
Yes, I would agree with that.
Right. I mean, what percentage of things that I say would you say fall into the category of I'm just quoting song lyrics, some random song lyrics?
On a good day, it's like 30-40%.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So my goal is to keep it under 50%. So
yeah,
I'm glad that I'm doing that. We open up all team meetings with walk up song.
We do.
Right. So it got me thinking, and I don't have an answer for this, so I'm relying on you.
Oh boy.
What song is what's the walk-up song for inbound?
It's the Muppets music, obviously.
It's time to get things started on the most sensational, inspirational.
So this is the walk-up song?
Yeah. And
okay.
as we cross the sky bridge, like you got to time it so as we cross the sky bridge, it's crescendoing. See?
It's not Lose Yourself?
No, I don't think it's Lose Yourself.
It's not All I Do Is Win?
I was avoiding that one like the plague because you've been on a tear with that one this week. So no, it is not that one.
It's not Paranoia. Everyone's coming to get me.
No.
They cut off my legs.
For
now
you,
I'm an
for
amputee.
you,
God
for you, it
me.
might be you. For
okay.
you, not for the rest of us.
You know, that's what's missing from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is a really good, strong beat song. That would probably be my that would be my music. I think that would be my song.
Wow.
I mean, I noticed you're saying, "Wow," you're not disagreeing. I've noticed that. I'm picking up. You're not disagreeing on that.
Not at all. Not at all. I just don't know how we got to One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I'm kind of amazed. I guess
I guess it was paranoia. By the way, that was flagpole sitter by Harvey Danger, for anyone who's wondering. I guess because as I was saying paranoia, you were saying for you.
Yeah,
and
for
so
you.
Paranoia connected to crazy, connected to institutionalized, connected to One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Yep.
Right? Is that not obvious? Like, was that really that much of a leap?
And this, everyone, is what I'm dealing with on a daily basis. This is Doug's brain in a nutshell.
Alrighty, Jess, what are we talking about today?
We're going to talk about tech debt.
Tech debt.
Mm-hmm.
You want to talk about tech debt? Of all the topics that we could talk about on the last business day before inbound.
I do. I want to talk about tech debt. We're going to inbound. I want to talk about tech debt before we go to inbound.
Alrighty. Well, let's talk about it.
Okay, so what is tech debt?
I don't know. I thought you were going to tell me. So tech debt is a metaphor. Believe it or not, Jess, I actually did a little bit of research before the show.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Because I wanted to make sure that I didn't say anything that conflicted too much with what's out there, and if I did, I would at least wanted to know it. So tech debt's a metaphor, and I thought this was well stated by one of the sources I looked at. As with any metaphor, its actual definition is somewhat ambiguous and can kind of mean what various people want it to mean. The way I treat and the way I think about tech debt, which, by the way, just so everybody knows, tech debt stands for technical debt, though its primary application, and I think a lot of people actually confuse tech debt. They think it actually stands for technology debt, which is a reasonable conclusion because it basically relates to technology. So what is tech debt? Well, first off, and I know you're wondering this, tech debt is a word that was coined by Ward Cunningham.
Computer programmer.
Does that answer
right?
your
It does.
Slack,
we
Slack
solved
emoji?
Yeah, it does.
So Ward Cunningham was also one of the original authors of the Agile Manifesto.
Mm-hmm.
So tech debt, also known as design debt, code debt, is typically used in the technology space, and it refers to basically anything that relates to a limitation by something that happened previously. It could be a bug, could be legacy code, missing documentation. A lot of times, and where it's used acutely is making the decision to do something fast. Hey, we can get this into place real fast, but that could lead to tech debt. Part of the idea behind that is, if you wanted to save up your money and build, to buy something in the future, you'd have to wait a long time, or you could borrow money, you could take on debt, and you could buy it now. So it's the limitations, the known and unknown consequences, the known and unknown negative consequences of decisions made about technology today that will have an impact tomorrow. Now, for me, I actually think of tech debt in a much broader sense. I think of tech debt as, so I guess I should explain. I think everything is technology.
What do you mean by that?
So what I mean by that is everything that we know is technology.
Can you expand on that?
So, I'll you know that Crossing the Chasm to me is one of the seminal books in business. Yep. We exist today in the way that we are because I read Crossing the Chasm in like 1992, 1993. And the thing that was interesting about me reading it and the application of it is I was not in a quote unquote technology industry. I was in the travel industry. I was consulting travel agencies, right? We were selling services to travel agencies.
Yeah.
There was no internet. Let me tell you one thing is you would never refer to a travel agency as an early adopter of anything.
Right. Yeah.
Though what I will say is early adopter, the early adopter phase is all relative. As I was reading the book, it gets talked about as applying to technology, but what they're really saying when they say technology is high technology, right? Digital technology. But think about this: a pencil is a technology.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There was a time that the only way you could write was with rocks. You would have to grind rocks into a cave wall or something somewhere, right? So when you went to a pencil, that was a technology.
Right.
I also believe, like, the famous joke about, the problem with spending at NASA, right? NASA spent hundreds of millions of dollars to invent a pen that writes upside down in space.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
The Russians used a pencil.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's not really true, but it's still funny. but there's also a very instructive lesson in that. Sometimes the right decision is not to add the new technology. Sometimes, so anytime you do something that is different,
Mm-hmm.
that is technology. That is a methodology. That is a new methodology, and there is a risk associated to that. Whenever you do something different, things change. So anytime you make a decision, every decision I make today is going to have an impact on what happens tomorrow and what happens in the future. By the way, every decision I don't make today is also going to have an impact, right?
Yep.
So not deciding is deciding, right? It's not necessarily an act of deciding, but it is. Wasn't it last? I can't remember which week we talked. We talked. It was last week. We were talking about behavioral economics on and decisions, right? That's why this is all still fresh. So making a decision, not making a decision, it's like, if you don't make a decision, you haven't gotten out of tech debt, right? You're not preventing tech debt. So any decision, like any decision, any action, any inaction that has a negative impact to slow something down, not in a good way,
Mm-hmm.
or to increase costs, is a version of tech debt. And so it is something that we should be thinking about is, okay, well, if I make this decision today, what does that do to me tomorrow? What does that do to me a year from now? And so on. So that, to me, that's what tech debt is the limitations that are created by previous decisions, actions, indecisions, inactions.
Okay. So even if you make no decision, you have tech debt. So it's not avoidable, tech debt. There's no way to avoid it.
No. I mean, I guess there's one way to avoid it.
And that's just to not.
Just don't ever do anything different than you're doing today.
Well, even then you might still have tech debt, wouldn't you?
How so?
Well, so if you don't do anything other than what you're doing today, you may still have tech debt with what you're doing today. And so that doesn't necessarily avoid it.
No, I don't think so. I mean, you'll probably be out of business or out of a job, which means you have even less tech debt. But yeah, I mean, the only way you can avoid tech debt is just spend your entire life sitting on the couch and don't move.
Yeah. Okay. It's fair.
Right? So as long as there's no movement,
yeah,
as long as there's no change, there's no tech debt. So yes, tech debt is part of the process. And so by the way, trying to avoid tech debt, and I hear it all the time. Well, we really want to avoid tech debt.
Mm-hmm.
That's like saying, well, we really want to guarantee success. Yeah, we really want to guarantee that we're going to. Yes, I'd like that too. Unfortunately, you can't do it legally on something that matters. So yeah, it is a. I mean, it's part of managing complex ecosystems. And by the way, this is this is such a core RevOps topic that I might go so far as to say that the reason RevOps exists, the reason that there is and the reason that it is different than just combining different roles together, is about considering, managing, and mitigating tech debt.
And so is tech debt necessarily a bad thing? So it's inevitable, but is it a bad thing?
So I don't like to call things that are bad. I mean, I'm going to get it's the last business day before inbound, so I'm a little bit punchy right now.
Yep.
Is death bad? I'm not saying tech debt is equal to death, but
Right.
I'm working really hard to avoid it.
Yeah.
Death, that is. Right. So it is. So I don't think of it as bad. I mean, let's put it this way: tech debt is certainly not good.
Right.
Oh, here's the thing that's interesting. I mean, so net it is bad. But because it's a limitation, right?
Yep.
But I don't like to think of it as bad in the judgmental sense of bad, because limitations and constraints are also the raw material of innovations and transformations.
Yep.
I mean, the whole fundamental idea of creative destruction is built on the idea of tech debt.
What do you mean?
Something comes into being, serves its purpose, something new gets created. Well, why create something new if there's not a limitation on what you have? So that constraint, that tech, like if I never had tech debt,
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Then I'd never have any reason to do anything different. So tech debt is something, Jess, it's like Steph Curry. Do you know who
The
Steph Curry
basketball
is?
player? Yes, the
Yes,
basketball player.
You can't stop him. The best you can do is control. So tech debt is something to be managed. And look, trying to avoid tech debt, again, the only way you avoid tech debt is to not do anything, right? There's actually, as you get deep into the material around tech debt, there's two types of tech debt. There's planned tech debt and unplanned tech debt, right? So there are decisions that we make today because we can do something quick that we know won't stand up. Right. I told you a story when we were preparing for this. Our athletic association that my son and daughter were playing in, the baseball commissioner decided to have one of the fields AstroTurf, artificial turf. They put artificial. Now, shockingly, it was for the age group that his kids played.
Right.
I was blown away. Like, who would have ever thought that? And of course, he made the whole argument. It's going to reduce rain delays. Well, no. Right. Oh, we also talked about how it's going to lower maintenance costs.
Right.
But what they never took into account was the fact that once you put artificial turf down, artificial turf has a lifespan. It's roughly 10 to 15 years. Well, like 11 years later, there was a problem. There was a budget shortfall because they couldn't afford to replace. They had to do a special raise or something to replace because they didn't plan for it. Right. Now, that was something that was totally planned. Right. And look, I wouldn't have put artificial turf on the field that he put it on, but there's nothing wrong with putting artificial turf. But you've got to plan for that, right?
Right.
Another form of tech debt is obsolescence, right? This solution, this approach is only gonna work for so long, right? If we wait until it's not working, then that's a problem. So I think that you've got to manage tech debt, you've got to consider tech debt, but it's not like I hear a whole bunch of people when back when we were working with smaller companies. They're doing $1.5 million in revenue. We're talking about something like, but that won't really work when we're a $50 million company.
Yeah. And
I was like, well, there's a whole bunch of shit that won't work when you're a $50 million company. What the fuck does that have to do with the conversation?
Right.
And actually, I think you were there when I said to a couple of them, not for nothing, we got to be a $5 million company before we worry about what's going to limit us to be a $50 million company. And one of the other points that I would make to him was, what works at a $50 million company doesn't work at $1.5 million.
Right.
Yep. So you're so worried about what's going to cause you to not get to 50. You're preventing yourself from getting to 5.
Right. Yeah. Yep.
And by the way, when you're at 5, between both the size, the issues that you're dealing with, and the time that it's going to take, you have no idea what you're going to need to do or not need to do.
Yeah. Yep. So how do you measure, calculate tech debt? How do you get, I guess I want to say more gauge your tech debt, because what we're talking about is not always just financial, but so how do you analyze your tech debt?
So I'm sure that I'm sure that that there are organizations that actually, and I'm sure someone has come up with a calculation to put a financial figure on tech debt.
Mm-hmm.
And especially as it relates to IT, that probably matters in some way. I don't think of it as financial. And I mean, the problem with measuring it, thinking about it from a financial context, is I don't think you can really measure it, because you can't measure tech debt's not absolute. Tech debt is relative.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's say we come out with code that's buggy. That's tech debt.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What would we have to have done differently to not have had buggy code?
Yeah.
What would that have cost? So the cost of tech debt,
mm-hmm.
right? Barracuda comes out with their firewall. There's bugs in it, but they come out at the right time in the right place. What if they had waited a little bit, cleaned everything up 100%? Well, someone else would have come in at the right time. They wouldn't have had the positions they would have. It would have cost them billions of dollars more. So the question that I would ask is, when you say, how do you analyze tech debt? I would say, well, what are you trying to accomplish? What's the job that we're trying to do here? What's the problem that you're trying to solve? What are you trying to get at by analyzing tech debt?
Okay.
And again, tech debt is, I think, what you want to be looking at. And again, anything, if we're talking about the broader element of tech debt here, because that's the RevOps issue.
Right.
I don't think that RevOps should be, yelling at their dev team that this is, we're going to have this or that tech debt. I think that's DevOps. That's right. What DevOps is about.
Mm-hmm.
But, so, I mean, you could kind of say any unwanted friction is a manifestation of tech debt. I think, I mean, this is why strategy is so important. So where tech debt becomes debilitating is when you don't have clear strategy, when you don't have, and again, if you're confusing a plan with strategy, you don't have clear strategy.
Right.
If there's not a diagnosis of the problem, if there's not a guiding policy, then you're going to have lots of tech debt, because you're not going to have any. You don't have any constraints for which to consider something. I think when you're analyzing your tech debt, it's okay. Where are we? Where do we need to be? What's our barrier? What's preventing? I think you also have to get to a place. You also have to think about, I think good enough comes in. Good enough has a lot to do with this. I mean, just because you have tech debt doesn't mean you should do anything about it.
Yeah.
Right. I think you have to. I mean, two of our key principles about radical execution come to play here. The juice has to be worth the squeeze.
Yep.
And you've got to consider opportunity costs. So you also have to be really careful. I think another place where I think that you get yourself into trouble with tech debt is when you're always shooting for the solution. See, that's what I do here, Jess, is I say things that cause people to go, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. For those that aren't watching, I just had a what? So what do you mean by that?
So you have two problems. One thing that I've noticed is, and especially companies, I mean, there's one that I'm thinking about right now. Holy cow. I mean, their tech debt is almost like instantaneous. They do this, that creates that problem. So then they go and fix that, which creates, right.
Yep.
By the way, we see that with people that are struggling with CRM implementation. Oh, no, this person is getting upset. We've got to fix that. So then
yeah.
And what's the underlying cause of that? They never made a decision about what the approach is supposed to be. Again, they never made the trade-off decisions. They didn't create the constraint. They didn't really define how is this supposed to work. And so they're trying to get adoption of technology rather than adoption of business process.
Yep.
So one thing that happens is there's a very strong tendency that you're actually defining it by the by what you think the problem is, or actually, let me say it better. You're defining it by the symptom.
Mm-hmm.
So you're defining your fix by the symptom. But here's the other thing. If I want something that doesn't exist right now, do I or does anyone know what I need to do to get that?
No, because it doesn't exist.
Right. So, I don't mean to quote Donald Rumsfeld here, but there's the known knowns, the known unknowns, and the unknown unknowns. Right.
Right.
And so you get tech debt when you don't account for the unknown unknowns. And then even more so, the known knowns that are actually unknowns. That is Mark Twain. I'll say it simpler. Mark Twain said it better. It ain't what you don't know that hurts you. It's what you think you know that ain't so.
Right.
Right. So you're bringing all kinds of assumptions into this. You're then putting it into action. If people are involved, here's what I can tell you. They're going to do shit that you didn't expect. Some of it's going to be good. Some of it's not going to be good. Other things are going to change. Like, you can build to the solution if you're in a closed linear system, but you cannot build to the solution if you're in a complex, open, or adaptive system. Right. And so this is why we've really come to talk about. I've actually become very much like, I like the idea of MVP less and less every day. I really do. In some places it might be fine, but I like it less and less every day. And the reason is I actually like it more. I like thinking about it more from the standpoint of completes, levels of complete.
Yep.
Right. Now, when it's done properly, there's no difference between level of complete and MVP. Right. But what's the level of complete? Right. So, and that's what system design is. System design is all about iterative elements and approaches and testing. There are times where pilots make sense. We had a great episode on why pilots don't work.
Yeah.
But a lot of times, so we've got a team of 575 salespeople. We've got a team of 37 salespeople. Okay, let's pilot this with 5 salespeople. Let's pilot it with 50 salespeople. Well, do we know what's working? And again, as a reminder, pilots tend to be more vertical rather than horizontal. Right. So when we're dealing with change, horizontal completeness is important to understand what's going on and move to the next step and move to the next step and move to the next step. And that's what Agile is. And it's no surprise that a creator of Agile is the person who created the term, who coined the term tech debt. Right. Every sprint is a complete cycle.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Let's get this to complete. Doesn't mean we're shipping it. Doesn't mean we're selling it. It means, okay, this is the level of complete. And then you can go in and see, okay, wait, does this interact with everything the way we thought it was going to interact? What happens when, what happens that we didn't expect? So when you go into a situation acknowledging that and understanding that you don't know what's going to happen, you can actually mitigate that problem. It's actually my brother who taught me that, who did, he does advanced pricing. And I was a financial advisor at the time. And if you think about it, if I'm advising you on your investments, in essence, what you're asking me to do is to predict the future.
Right.
And the more that I predicted the future, you know what I learned? You know what I finally came to understand?
It's impossible to predict the future.
I'm not very good at predicting the future. and neither is anyone else at predicting the future. And I ended up doing some really, really good things. And my clients were very happy because I actually came to understand I have no idea what's going to happen in the future.
Yep.
My job is to prepare for what are our likely scenarios, what's our plan when things happen, what are we doing, how do we stay agile?
Yep.
Right. And so that's how, we look at it. And I think when we talk about analyzing tech debt, I think what we're doing is we're analyzing our business processes. We're analyzing We're analyzing points of friction. We're analyzing where's value being created. We're doing constraint analysis. We're thinking about what's the outcome? What's the situation? What's changed? By the way, what's changed that we didn't expect was going to change?
Yep.
What did we learn? What did we learn that we're surprised by? What are we seeing that's causing us to be curious? So I think that the best way to increase the negative impact of tech debt, look at your situation and with the intent of finding the answers. Want to mitigate tech debt? Look at your situation from a perspective of curiosity. What questions does it make me ask? What's that next step? How can we go far enough that it'll mean something, but not so far that it puts us into a place where we can't turn back? The other thing that I like about levels of completeness is it deals with a behavioral a behavioral heuristic that kills us. It's the sunken cost theory. It's spilt milk. Right. So what if, who's your favorite basketball team? Basketball is your favorite sport, right, Jess?
Basketball is my favorite sport. College basketball. So the Kentucky Wildcats are my favorite basketball team.
So let's just say that let's say that, so if I had courtside tickets for the Kentucky Wildcats, would you want to go?
Yeah.
They're playing Louisville. It's Kentucky Louisville.
Well, yeah. 100%. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So let's say that turns out that there's major storms. It is ugly, angry hurricane spanning the entire Southeast from San Antonio through Kentucky to the East Coast.
Okay.
And I call you up and say, hey, Jess, I got tickets for you to go. I got some extra tickets courtside for Kentucky. And oh, by the way, I've got the flight for you and everything. Do you want to go? I'm going to bet you don't want to go. I'm going to bet you're going to be like, yeah, you know what? It's, and I realize I've given you the ultimate, but you're probably not going to go, right? There's danger of getting there. Are you telling me now you're still going to go?
I think you're wrong.
Okay, fine. So it's Kentucky playing St. Bonaventure.
Okay, then I'm not going to go.
Okay. So Kentucky St. Bonaventure. Now, what if you had bought, for whatever reason, you had access to courtside tickets. So even though it was Kentucky St. Bonaventure, you still went ahead, you bought the air tickets, you bought the hotel, you bought the courtside tickets. And now there's major, major storms. All that, dangerous, etc. Are you more likely to go, less likely to go?
More likely.
You're far more likely to go, right?
Yeah.
Why? Why, if I give you the tickets, you won't go? But if you bought the tickets 3 months earlier, right? Because you paid.
Because I've got skin in the game.
Well, but you know what? You don't have any more skin in the game now. The money's gone. Whether you go or don't go, the money's gone. Right?
Fair. Yeah.
Right. Now, by the way, I get it. I'm like, well, wait, I already bought the tickets. How can I not go?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I dealt with that when my kids got older and all of a sudden I didn't have 4 people to go to every Nats game that I had, a partial season ticket planned for. And I'm like, somebody has to go. I remember I finally got to the point where I spent half of a day trying to get a hold of people who wants to go. And I ended up giving the tickets to somebody that I didn't particularly like.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, okay, wait a second. Now I just made my experience worse.
Yep.
I thought about it. And I'm like, wait, I would have rather had an empty seat because at least I could have not felt crowded. So anyways, right. That's the sunken cost theory. So that's another example of tech debt. Mm-hmm. Right. We're being held back by the decisions that we made previously.
Yeah.
Right. And so when you think about it through this levels of complete, what you get to do is you get to make the next decision. Right. Every time, if you're playing Texas Hold'em, every round, new decisions get made. Good poker players say, guess what? My decision before means nothing. shitty poker players, if you're in, you're in, right? And that's another element that leads to the devastating consequences of tech debt.
So we talked about guiding policy. We talked about levels of complete. What are some other steps you can take to reduce tech debt? Try to control your tech debt.
So this is probably the place where the world has caught up to my philosophy more than anywhere else, where I've always felt this way, but you couldn't do it. So I look at everything through the lens of custom or configured.
Okay.
So here's the best example of configured. Legos.
Yep.
I can build anything if you give me enough Legos.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
Is it going to be ideal and perfect? And no. If I want that, then I'm going to build, it's like I can build a model B-52 bomber with Legos.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Or I could buy a model airplane, model B-52 airplane. Now the model B-52 airplane is going to be intricate. It's going to be specific. It's going to look right. It's going to be dimensionally correct. It's going to have perfect curves if I've spent enough, right? I don't know. That's custom, right?
Yeah.
Because what can I do with that B-52 model airplane kit? I can build a model B-52. I can't do anything else.
Right.
Right. With Legos, I can build that, and then I can go, I don't like B-52 anymore. I want to build Hogwarts. Right?
Yep.
I don't want to build Hogwarts, but someone told me that I wanted to do that one. Right. And so what configurability does is it lets me take predominantly pre-existing things, modular things that can be used in different ways to pull those things together. Right? Mm-hmm. So we're always making a custom or configure decision, right? Do I build it internally? Do I buy it? Do I license it?
Yep.
We had a debate.
I was just thinking about this.
Custom integration or iPaaS. That is custom or configure.
Yeah.
And so I think custom matters in those critical areas that are at the core of your uniqueness. They are the things that are the difference between success and failure.
Yep.
Right. Now, by the way, I will tell you that especially in today's world, more of that custom, it doesn't have to be physically custom, right? It can be an idea. Like the way we apply what we do is custom.
Yep.
I mean, here's the funny thing. I think it's safe to say that we have probably one of the most advanced implementations of HubSpot for how we're using it, right? We don't have a piece of custom code in our implementation. We don't have everything that we're doing is configured. And so that, our custom is how we're bringing these things together, how we're applying it, et cetera. Right. That minimizes tech debt because we can change it. By the way, if we decide, oh, wait, we've got to make a big turn. Yes, that's going to have tech debt, but we're going to be able to adjust at a lower cost. We're going to be able to get things back up faster, et cetera. So what you got to do is you've got to look and say, okay, if we're going to build this, if we're going to custom this, because that's really where tech debt comes in and hits. By the way, if we were to change our service model now, if we were to decide our service model doesn't work,
yep,
we would be facing a big dose of tech debt. And the reason we'd be facing a big dose of tech debt is it's not just changing the org chart. It's not just changing the delivery team. I would say at this point, if we were going to make a radical change to our service model, we would probably have to replace 80% of the people here. Not because they couldn't work in another environment, but because they've been conditioned.
Yeah.
Think about, now we didn't jump to this service model in one big step. We iterated and here and here and here. Right. And by the way, if we ended up in a completely different service model, the way we would end up getting there is probably iterate.
The way we got here.
We'd look back and we'd go, oh wait, we're all of a sudden doing it very, very differently. But again,
right.
But that is an example of intangible tech debt, right? We've that culture, your structure, your approach. You can't just say, all right, everybody. It's why we do less and less guided implementations. It's why we do less on the lower end, because I can't be working with you all the time, talking to you about how you need to see the problem that doesn't exist, understand the 13 different, and then say, okay, now on this instance, don't do
that. Right.
So that's our custom.
Yeah.
Right. And so what I would say is that you're always making the custom versus configuration decision, and how you manage that decision is going to have a huge impact on your ability to mitigate tech debt. And if you're going to go custom, I would configure some completes before I went all in custom. It's a reason that we built the EasySync product.
Yeah.
Right. Is people want to jump right to custom integration, right to full integration, before they've even learned what the change in their CRM is going to cause. And right. And so just as they're learning things, we're restricted by what was done before. But if we simplify it to what do we need right now? And let's remember, we don't have anything.
Yeah.
Right? So what do we need? And let's do this.
Yep.
Right. Let's configure this, get through, see some examples. It falls into if you can't do it manually, you can't automate it. And that's an example of what leads to a lot of tech debt is you skip that learning step.
Yeah. Yeah. It's slowing down to speed up. I mean, so we've got a big implementation that we're working on with several groups we're rolling out. And we've actually made the decision to hold on some of the higher level enablement tools, because we realized, okay, we've got to get them in and using the thing before we can have them using some of the more advanced tools. That's actually going to get us that adoption and them using those tools faster.
So the funny thing is,
mm-hmm.
I think if we were having this conversation 12, 18 months ago, I wouldn't be saying anything right now. I think what I just said is actually not slowing down to speed up. It's actually speeding up to speed up.
How so?
Think about the places where they skip that step, where they go all in when.
Yeah.
That actually what happens on those implementations? It wreaks havoc. It slows things down. It slows down adoption, and there's no corresponding learning benefit to it.
Yeah, I guess the way that I view it, and the way I view it is slowing down to speed up. Like you skip that step, you're now here, and then you want to fix that, so then you go here and you put Band-Aids on it, and the whole thing just breaks apart.
It would. So I would have said slow down to speed up because of that, right? And so theoretically, like if the custom integration worked the way that you thought it would work theoretically, it would be a slowing down to speed up. But we've gone through this enough times now, and we've seen the difference that in reality, it ends up being the reason that implementations get delayed. It ends up being the reason that users can't fully use the system. It ends up being the reason that the first complete of using the system is more complicated, therefore harder to learn.
Yeah.
So to get into that next, this is why we say always be launching.
Yeah.
Right. If you're launching your CRM 3 to 4 times per year, what you're going to find is you're not going to have that much tech debt, because you're never making that big of a change at any given time where you're being fully held up by. Right?
Yeah.
And when that tech debt does begin to emerge, and you've got an always be launching 3 zones of execution mindset, the signs of that tech debt start showing early. So you start planning for it, and now you mitigate the impact and the cost of tech debt. And this is both with technology and with soft technology.
And the other piece I'll add on that is, how many times have we done that, and then they end up wanting to revert because we realize, and now we're spending the time kind of taking that step back, and you end up where you were, weeks ago, months ago.
Actually, I think you end up worse than that, because it's kind of like, if I pull this organ out, it never goes back to where it was.
That's true. That is very true. Yeah.
Right. So there's and again, this is why, this is why levels of completeness is,
Yep.
You're not going to change your place for 12 to 18 months anyways. If you
Yeah.
want to do anything that matters, it's going to take 12 to 18 months for it to have its impact.
Yep.
So why are you trying to do it in one step?
I agree. I'm laughing because I'm living this right now with some of our customers.
I get why you don't want to. I get why it makes sense. Like, you don't think you're doing this. But I mean, there's a reason that 70% of CRM implementations are not considered successful. There's a reason that shelfware is a term. There's a reason that tech debt is a term. There's a reason that everybody doesn't, there's a reason that people are spending more money on technology for the purposes of lowering their costs, only to see their costs increase.
Yep. Cool. I have some takeaways. So, limitations and constraints drive creativity and innovation. I really think that that's a good point. We don't talk about that or think about that in relation to the things RevOps does, or when we're talking about CRM implementations, and it's so true. Think about levels of complete. We hit on that several times, and that's really how I'm thinking about things these days. Configured versus custom, that's going to have a huge impact on how you mitigate tech debt, that choice between configured and custom. And then overall, if there's not a guiding policy, you're going to have a lot of tech debt. You need to have a guiding policy to guide those decisions that you're making around your technology.
And the guiding policy needs to be based on a diagnosis of the problem.
Yep.
And not the specific problem. The diagnosis of the organization. Where is the organization going? By the way, you're not optimizing a pipe. You're not optimizing a specific function. Like, you're not optimizing conversion, for lack of a better word. You're optimizing the business, right?
Yep.
You're optimizing the whole, and we have to understand that in complex systems, optimizing the individual actually creates havoc on the whole more often than it doesn't.
Yep. I think that wrapped us up nicely.
That wraps us
Doug,
up. There's nothing else. There's no song.
No song.
There's no joke at this point. No, what are you looking forward to? Just what are you looking most forward to for Inbound next week?
Looking forward to seeing you, Doug.
Oh, I thought you were going to go in a different place. I thought you were looking forward to the new Lyft swag.
I am looking forward to the new Lyft swag.
Reminding you and everybody else listening to the show, just say no to shitty RevOps.
Until next time.
And that's a wrap on this episode of the RevOps Show. If you are interested in reading more or learning more about the topic of tech debt, we do have a blog on the 4 questions to gauge if tech debt is a hidden cost. You can find the link in the show notes on our website. And if you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to go subscribe on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you happen to listen to us. We'd also appreciate a review or sharing the episode. We love reading what you all have to say about the show. And if you have any questions you'd like to ask Doug or Jess about technical debt, aka tech debt, email me at hannah@liftenablement.com or hit us up on formerly Twitter, now X, @demandcreator. And until next time, just say no to shitty RevOps.